From the KDLM studios in Detroit Lakes, it's Hodge Podge with Carol McCarthy, presented by Partnership for Health, and now airing on TV3.
Welcoming Detroit Lakes School Superintendent Doug Froke in the studio this morning. Good morning, Superintendent Froke.
Hi, Carol. I'm sorry I bring a little nuisance snow with me.
Yeah, that's kind of the monkey on our back these days. Ice and snow and cold. And Detroit Lakes School District is dealing with that with snow days and extreme cold days. Lots of closures.
Ice, snow, cold, repeat.
Mm-hmm.
Ice, that kind of thing. And
right.
It sounds like that we're going to be stuck in this pattern for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So we heard it last night, and then we were talking a little bit about it during the board meeting last night, that this kind of a cycle has the potential to hang in there for another month.
Right. So what is the plan? I mean, have we used essentially all our snow days, designated snow days now to make up?
Actually, we have.
Okay.
That we had essentially 2 days snow days built in, and we felt at the time very comfortable with that when we set the calendar a year ago at this time, simply because the law of averages over time has said that 1, maybe 2 at the outset. So we banked 2 inside the regular calendar, and anything over 2 would go at the end of the year. So we have 2 dates, then 4 days of school that we have missed due to weather cancellation, and so that means that we have 4 to make up at this point, and so we'll be having school on March 18th. And I think the next one is April 22nd. And then when we go to the end of the school year, where that would be tacked on a Thursday, the 23rd of May, and the 24th of May, which is a Friday. So at this point in time, anything after any school calls, weather-related calls, if we miss, would have to be made up then following Memorial Day. We're not real proponents of that. Mm-hmm. I think we've got a few people in our system, including myself, that have been in school districts where we go past Memorial Day and even into June, and we see the productivity. Mm-hmm. Kids are done.
Right.
And so we really like what we do here in Detroit Lakes. With Labor Day to Memorial Day, we get our work done, and then we're off to the races. So we'll see what happens. Once you get into that, I think the board last night just kind of opted to stay with the approved calendar, mm-hmm. As is. And then if we would happen to experience, and we all know how those pop-up March snows can be in the middle of the night, and if something would happen, I think we'll probably have the discussion again. But we'll start brainstorming if we were to lose more about what we could do alternatively. If we have to get into Tuesday after Memorial Day, that kind of thing.
Well, what about e-learning? I know there's a number of schools, and I know a lot of Twin City schools actually do that, where they miss a school and they go online to get assignments and essentially have class online. Is that something that we would consider, or just because I know that was brought up last night a little bit too, and it's been brought up in years past about teaching classes online, but not everybody has access to the internet. So that is a bit of recreating the wheel as far as e-learning would go in our district.
It's interesting you bring that up, Carol, too. You have seen a lot of that over the last few weeks. School districts, they set up situations where kids can access their lessons online. And we knew this was going to come when the internet was created in the 90s and that kind of thing. We knew this would happen. But the interesting thing about that is that there's the other part of that situation where the teachers then have to be available for a certain time period. I'm just going to pick up, I think it's Montevideo that does it quite frequently, and I think their teachers have to be available from 10 in the morning until 3 o'clock. Mm-hmm. For calls from kids, exchanges via email, those kinds of things. So that's out there. We brought, and state law, the legislature 2 years ago, I think, made a provision in law that allowed for that, mm-hmm. that you could do that.
5 days out of the year.
There you go. And so we brought that policy to our board, and I'm trying to remember if it was at the December board meeting. And our board members, interestingly, and quite honestly, I tend to agree with the board. They said, you know what, we're really not in favor of this, and meaning staying with the core traditional instruction, and that's just fine. And so, quite honestly, we're going to recraft the policy to say that we're not interested in doing any e-learning type days. What was it? Shakopee schools will call it COLD, Connected Learning Day,
right?
And so that's kind of interesting, and so we're not interested at this point, and we'll continue to do what we do and what we've done over the years, and stay with that traditional. Make the day up, come in and get the pure form of instruction and that kind of thing. Not
okay.
So anyway, maybe I'm not using the right verbiage there, but it's interesting you bring that up.
All right. So we're talking about the snow days. Kind of the weather has taken over lots of newscasts and our daily activities, as everybody across the nation is now learning it's okay to talk about the weather because it affects our daily lives so much. It also affects our activities. Lots of activities had to be rescheduled. Some canceled. Some postponed. So I'm assuming Rob is probably up to here with snow and rescheduling and that. And now that it's tournament time, of course, that's usually when all the bad weather hits too. So we got that to contend with as well. So
it's Carol, it's been one of the interesting things and the tough part of what we experienced where our activity schedule is concerned is that the gap, the window to make things up narrows with each and every day now, because we're in the middle of, it seems strange to say this, we're in the middle of February, and there's not much left of the regular season. So therefore there's not many opportunities to make things up. And that's what we got into here in this last few weeks. We were able to do and make up, I think, the majority. There may have been a couple games in a sport area that were lost. But just as an example, I know the boys basketball team plays 4 games this week. Yeah. Well, that's not good for kids.
No.
And we would never want to do that. But with the pressures that come with section play and section seating, it had to be done. And so we get that, and I've always been an advocate. We're playing the 26-game season for our basketball teams and our hockey teams is too much. There's too many games, and that needs to be scaled back a little bit, simply because of the things that we're running into right now. And is that really good for kids?
All right, I'm in the studio today with Detroit Lake School Superintendent Doug Froke. Of course, weather is affecting classes and sports and everybody's lives these days as we head into the middle of February. Also on the plate of the school board and school district are the projects that are going to get underway, the voter-approved projects, a bond referendum that was approved by voters in November. And those should be getting underway. Where are we at in the project process now? Are we close to getting some bids out pretty soon, or just getting the details finalized, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question, Carol. We're on Thursday morning. Actually, the board is meeting in special session at 7 a.m. and at the city offices to basically give our architectural firm, Zerberg, and our construction management firm, Gertz Construction, the go-ahead on the total projects that we have identified as one part of what we call the review and comment projects, and those were the projects that were voted on, and then some alternative projects that we view as important and necessary. And then what we're doing is that with hopes that, again, it's presumed that the board will say, go ahead and go out for bid. And then once we see the bids come in, then if we're under bid, then potentially there's one of two things that can happen, is that potentially one would be if we come in under bid, we take what we gained from underbidding and address one of those alternate projects. Or two, the district has obviously, as we've dealt with the middle school exterior over the last few years, we did the middle school auditorium, we did the Rossman parking. The district over time has been able to put dollars away for capital projects. We're also going to identify some of those dollars that are available without compromising the fiscal health of the district and see what we can put potentially toward those alternates. So we've got a couple moving pieces in place, either on bids coming in positive or favorable for the district that might address alternate projects, or to making a decision about how much of the district funds we're going to expend to enhance the project. So you get into these things and into these projects and you go, well, if we're in this particular project area right now, why don't we do this? And that comes, it's just like renovating a house. Well, if you're putting in new cabinetry, well, maybe the wiring needs to be redone or something that I'm just grabbing it as an example here, but that's what happens when you get into these projects. And so we're trying to address that, and hopefully on Thursday morning then, it's the goal of the board to be able to say to Zerberg and Gertz Construction, go forward and bid.
All right. And so the Rossman School is actually the first of the projects that will be done this summer. That's kind of what the momentum is moving towards, to do the Rossman School this summer. And get that bid out first.
Yep,
and
that's the first bid package. Yep.
Okay.
Yep,
Just a
exactly.
couple of things. We only have about a minute or so left, and I wanted to just make sure people know that the school board actually has kind of changed its meeting schedule now for beginning in March. The meetings will be held. There will be a work session on the second Tuesday or the second Monday of the month, and then the regular board meeting has been changed to the third Monday of the month.
That is correct.
Starting in November.
Starting in March.
I mean, March. I'm still
we want
in
to get through
November.
summer. We want some summer, Carol. So beginning in March, that's exactly right. Well, the second Monday, which used to be the regular meeting, will now become a work session. No real action taken at this point, where the board studies issues and gets reports, and then we talk about what the regular monthly agenda will look like. So the board's prepared. And those kinds of things when they get to the third Monday of the month, which will be the regular meeting month. Both will start at 5:30. Both will be at the city council chamber. So kind of a neat thing. It's sign times as it relates to board governance and the change and those kinds of things. So it's going to be a good thing and promote good discussion and just overall awareness. We have, the business of school is large in Detroit Lakes. And there's many, many topics. So it just takes discussion to get through issues.
And we've got a lot of new board members.
That's correct.
So that has to do with it as well. But that's the more you meet, the more you discuss, the more communication is always a good thing, I think, in this case.
There you go.
All right. Superintendent Doug Froke from Detroit Lake Schools, my guest this morning on Hodge Podge. We're going to have to wrap it up. Superintendent Froke, thank you so much.
Thanks, Carol. Happy February. Happy Valentine's Day.
Right.
Happy Giving Hearts.
All right. Onward and upward. And that's going to wrap up Hodge Podge for today. Tomorrow we'll have Detroit Lakes Mayor Matt Brink joining me in the studio just after 8:30 on Hodge Podge.
Now, back to Hodge Podge with Carol McCarthy on KDLM Detroit Lakes.
Welcome back to Hodge Podge, this second Wednesday of the month, February 13th, 2019. Back in the studio, Detroit Lakes Mayor Matt Brink. Good morning, Mayor Brink.
Good morning, Carol.
Happy Valentine's Day Eve.
It is, and I think it's actually above zero today.
I know,
so
that's not a bad
welcome thing, isn't it?
Yeah, in the middle of Polar Fest in our fair city, so a big draw for the community.
It is.
Lots of events. And our community was recognized, or the Polar Fest, actually, the committee, and Polar Palace was recognized by the State Tourism Bureau last week.
Yeah, that's a pretty prestigious award to get, best new event in Minnesota, and so that was really cool. And if you haven't been down to see the King's Throne down by the pavilion, it's really quite a sight, especially at night when it's all lit up. So thank you to all those folks who spent all this time, put all this effort into creating this great event and the Polar Fest and all these things. So.
All right. Yes. So Polar Fest continues through this weekend. So check it out. PolarFestDL.com for more events. Mayor Brink, meeting last night, meeting of the council for February. And a number of things on the agenda, including The city has been working on amending a few ordinances, kind of gearing up for the main tourism season. One of those items was the noise ordinance that got a first reading for some amendments to put some more option of a noise permit, a season permit.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest change. You know, a lot of these things we handled last night, Carol, were just kind of housekeeping and cleaning up some of the language and different things in these various ordinances. But in the noise ordinance, we did put an option in where if someone wants to have some music, let's say in the summer, you know, on the weekends, they can purchase a season pass, so to speak, rather than having to buy individual licenses for each date. So that was probably the highlight of that change in that ordinance.
All right. And then, of course, I guess more of schedule for violations, like fines for violations,
right.
I think. I don't know that we had that before.
That was also a new change. There is a schedule of fines for violating the ordinance. So that's spelled out a little more clearly as well in some of these changes.
All right, so that was the first reading, public hearing. Nobody showed up for the public hearing, so I guess establishments were sent letters that this was going on, so they had the opportunity.
Everybody was notified that we were going to be discussing these changes, and again, they weren't very significant, so I don't think there was, you know, a lot of people that were really interested in coming and getting into the weeds on it, so.
Okay, so that moves forward. Second reading will be in March. And then another ordinance that was amended. It was Ordinance 441, which has to do with short-term rentals. And that has to do with like vacation rentals or Airbnbs that are popping up. I did go on the site today and looked for some of those located in Detroit Lakes, and I didn't realize that I kind of did realize that there was nothing regulating these short-term rentals in the city, but now
Correct.
The first reading was last night, and now the city is setting itself up to start controlling those more.
So when you were doing your searching, how many did you find in the city?
Well, I looked at the Airbnb, and there were, I would say, just 5 that popped up.
Okay.
In the city, there's a lot in the county.
We know we have these short-term rental situations in Detroit Lakes, you know, whether it's on Airbnb or VRBO, there's a number of different sites. And we did give first reading to Ordinance 441, which will put into effect a number of regulations. One of them would be that they have to register, have the property inspected by our city inspector, and obviously for safety reasons, they've got to pay our local lodging tax, and there's a number of requirements that they'll have to meet. And, you know, basically, part of this is to put these rental situations on an even playing field with our hotels and motels in the city. And so we think this is a good way to go, you know, and we'll give it the second reading at our March meeting.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things, too, that was brought up, I think, by Vice Mayor Zeman was, you know, with this conditional use permit, essentially you have to get a conditional use permit to have a vacation rental.
Right.
And that also requires conditional use permit. There's parking requirements, you know, so many spots per bedroom and that sort of thing. So I know that he was worried about the parking issues because that was one of the big points that he has been working on through the years with multifamily rental units. And in fact, another ordinance amendment had a read through last night dealing with multiple family rentals.
Yeah, the other ordinance you're talking about had to do with the parking, and that would be part of, it would have an effect on these short-term rentals as well, because they're going to have so many off-street spaces if they're going to have a situation like this with a short-term rental. But yeah, in order to have a short-term rental, you have to obtain a conditional use permit, and that requires a public hearing, and all the neighbors in the area within so many feet would be notified. And so there's a vetting process that you have to go through. Again, we've given it first reading, and if anybody is interested or has concerns about it, they can certainly come to our March meeting where we are going to consider giving it the second reading and adopting the ordinance.
All right. Yes. So any of those people listed on those sites might want to check, because what happens, with these people that are up and running, they will have to immediately adhere to this ordinance, or will they be given a little bit of a?
No, they'll have to adhere to it. They're going to have to come in and apply for their conditional use permit, and they're going to have to provide the different insurance documentation, all the various things that we've spelled out. So they'll have to be in compliance. All
right. And being in March, they'll have a little bit of opportunity to get up to speed before the big season comes. They haven't got renters already. So that's something to consider. Detroit Lakes is adopting, and we didn't have anything in place before this ordinance 441 amendment. So now there's something. And the final reading, second reading, will be next month. So in the studio with Detroit Lakes Mayor Matt Brink, talking about things going on in the city. Mayor Brink, also another item to talk about is, the city has a number of city-owned properties. I'm talking about like the DLCCC, Detroit Mountain, the Country Club, and another housekeeping item is to renew those contracts, rent agreements with the people that run those. And last night we had Stu Omberg on hand from the CCC talking about the agreement, and essentially asked if they were doing a good job for the city. And then the Country Club, Sam Rufer, president of the Country Club, also was on hand.
Yeah, we approved the management and program services contract for the DLCCC. This is a city-owned facility that's managed and operated by the DLCCC Inc., I believe they're called, and they're a nonprofit corporation that manages the facility for us. So we approved that contract for another year, and Stu Omberg was there, who is the executive officer for the community center, was there last evening, and everything was approved, and we're looking forward to another great year at the community center.
All right. And then the Country Club as well. There were just a little fee adjustments, and I think the season pass fee may have changed just a little bit, but Sam Rufer was on hand to talk about the CC too.
Right. The actual action that the council took last night was to approve the 2019 fee schedule. And we looked at the fees, and Sam explained some of the reasoning behind the fees. There wasn't a lot of changes to the green fees. I think there was a little change in the season passes, but for the most part, the fees have stayed about the same for the last few years. So looking forward to another great year at the Country Club as well.
All right. Detroit Lakes Mayor Matt Brink in the studio with me this morning on this February 13th, 2019. Mayor Brink, a few other things that happened last night. Of course, you had the swearing in of a new volunteer firefighter.
We did. We have added a firefighter. I think we were short a couple firefighters. Now we're maybe down to just one vacancy, but we swore in John Jacobson last evening as our latest firefighter.
Right, and he actually has to go through a year of training before he gets to the swearing in, correct?
That's
correct. So he had to go through a lot just to get there last night.
And we have a great fire department.
Right.
These guys do a tremendous job. It's an all-volunteer department, and we really appreciate all the good work that they do providing fire protection here in Detroit Lakes.
And they were out these past couple of weeks in that sub-zero, that extremely cold weather.
I cannot imagine being out in that cold weather and fighting a fire.
I'm glad that they're doing it, because I don't know that I would do the same. All right, and then we actually had a new hire of a new police officer filling in the post that was vacated by the retiring Wayne Tolbert.
Yeah, we approved a new police officer, Nicholas Erickson, and he's going to be starting Monday, I believe, will be his first day, and he'll go through some training initially, and he'll be sworn in at our March council meeting. So we're welcoming Officer Nicholas Erickson to the force.
All right, yes, I believe Chief Todd said he starts on Monday with the field training. And
we also, Carol, had Greta Guck last night, the new director of the Detroit Lakes Public Library, came and introduced herself to the council and made a few comments. So we welcome Greta on board. We had a real nice sort of retirement program for Mary Haney at the library recently, and a lot of folks showed up for that. So we want to thank Mary for all her years of service, and we certainly welcome Greta as our new director.
Right, yes. So Greta takes over at the helm, and we also met their new children's services librarian the other week on Hodge Podge. That's filling in for Greta. So lots of changeover, changing of the guard, so to speak, in various positions around the city. Mayor Brink, too, I just wanted to touch on this briefly since we last spoke. I think going back to the police department, we had Chief Todd, who was on unpaid leave due to an incident last summer, and now Sergeant Strand has been found not guilty of charges against him. He's been on unpaid leave for a year. Where are we at with that situation with Officer Strand?
We're currently conducting our own internal investigation. We had to wait until the criminal part of it was concluded, and so we're conducting our own internal investigation, and we hope to have that wrapped up shortly. And that's really about all I can tell you as far as what's going on there. That's
okay.
Pretty it.
All right. And some of the other things going on in town, dealing with the capital improvement projects. I know also since the last time we spoke, you had the meeting of the annual meeting with the planning session with the council members and staff. And some of the things that came out of that, you're kind of refocusing for the year, but capital improvement projects, you got a list of things that the city is looking at.
Yeah, we of course had our annual meeting right before our regular council meeting, which is just kind of a housekeeping meeting. But then the next week or maybe 2 weeks later, we had a strategic planning session, and we went over our capital improvement plan for all the street improvements and different things for the next 5 years or so. And a couple of things that are coming up this summer that I wanted to mention is we're going to have a complete reconstruction of West Avenue from all the way from Willow all the way down to where it dead ends by Highway 10. We're going to have a complete reconstruction of Willow Street from Jackson Avenue to Washington Avenue, and these are big projects that are probably going to carry on throughout most of the summer. So I just want to give people a heads up that those are a couple of the things that are coming up. And then, of course, we can get in, down into the next year, and there are just a number of projects, and we use this plan to sort of plan out, the year that the project's going to be done. It helps in our budgeting process and things like that. So that was one of the things we did at our strategic planning session, was to lay out the next 5 years in our capital improvement project. We also talked about a number of the city facility projects that we've got facing us, including, of course, the new police department facility, which will be funded with our new sales tax, and we've got our a new public works facility in the planning stages for our street department and our park and public works department. We know we've got to address some of the issues with the Washington ballpark at some point, and just a number of things that we've got. I know the museum is going to probably be asking for some city assistance for a new museum facility. So a number of facility projects that we're looking at in the coming years here.
Right. And I've spoken to both our representatives, Senator Kent Eakin from Twin Valley, and of course, Paul Marquardt. Paul Marquardt, Representative Marquardt, heads up the tax committee this year. But he was talking, I did specifically ask them about the local option sales tax and when we would hear about that, but it's going to go to the end of the session. Unfortunately, in May, it will come down to that. That will be included in a bill.
Yeah, we have the language for the bill all drafted. It's ready to go. It sounds like they won't approve these or take up these bills until later in the session, but I'm not anticipating any problem. And actually, Kelsey Clem, our city administrator, and Vice Mayor Zeman are going down to a meeting down in St. Paul with the League of Minnesota Cities next week, and they will be meeting with Kent and Paul and certainly will have an update for us on where we sit with the bill for our new sales tax for our police department facility.
Right. All right. So lots of things moving forward here in the city of Detroit Lakes. Mayor Brink, my guest this morning on Hodge Podge. And I think another item that was brought up last night was the council gave the go-ahead for Public Works to apply for a grant. They want to build a trail out here, which I was extremely pleased about. Trail 59 to Richwood. And looking for funding for that. I know that they've been working on a trail system around the city, and it's a pretty neat. It's coming together pretty nicely.
You know, we've got many segments of trails that we've completed, and some are finally starting to be connected, so that there's a continual trail that you can utilize throughout the various parts of the city. And last night, the council did approve a resolution supporting a application for a local trail connection grant. And that trail would run over on 59, and it would come kind of connect over by the radio station here, wouldn't it?
Right. Well, yeah, kind of across by the cemetery, and then come up Tower Road, I think,
right.
Somewhere out there.
So,
I want a little bridge over the swamp here.
Do you?
The Golden Gate Bridge. So KDLM. Well, Mayor Brink, we're kind of digressing here, but we're running out of time too, and I appreciate you coming in and sharing some of the updates with us.
Okay, well, thanks for having me, Carol.
Detroit Lakes Mayor Matt Brink, and that's going to wrap up Hodge Podge for this 13th day of February 2019. Tomorrow, Detroit Lakes Community and Cultural Center will join me in the studio just after 8:30. I'm Carol McCarthy, KDLM, Detroit Lakes.